You don't need kinetic weapons at all to destroy somebody's reputation, to subvert society, to take over a political system.
The word we see is not always the word that exists. Behind every headline, there are invisible battles. Battles of power, perception, influence, and information. Tonight, we enter that world. Welcome to Believe in Future Amazing Mentor Global Leadership Series, where we bring you conversations with people shaping the future of humanity. I am your host, Gaurav Garg. Our guest today is a national security and human rights lawyer, geopolitical analyst, journalist, media strategist, and one of the boldest voices in modern foreign policy discussion. From information warfare to media east diplomacy, from counter-terrorism to global media narratives, she has spent years analyzing the hidden structures shaping international politics. Please welcome Irina Tsukerman. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here.
When you look back to your younger self, what first pushed you towards understanding the world beyond borders?
As a child, I was always interested in other cultures. What I read inspired me to try to bring some measure of justice to people who were in a situation where they could not easily help themselves. I decided that going into international law would probably be the best suited area for me. I decided to start doing things my way and started volunteering initially as an attorney for a human rights organization where I was matched with clients from around the world. I soon started forging relationships with people. I started looking at things long beyond legal frameworks and into security and human rights frameworks. Many of these organizations are actually not particularly good at vetting the people they work with. Many of these human rights organizations that claim to assist the less fortunate are often politicized. They put profit and political interests of their donors over the needs of the people they're supposed to serve. They look for the cases that are most likely to gain attention and most likely to resonate with the public. Some stories are entirely fabricated or manipulated. I started disclosing how national security and human rights area intermesh. They use people for their own political ends, and they often end up elevating bad actors. I realized that literally any organization can be captured by financial gain. Most of these people are regular lawyers and human rights operatives and activists. Their presentation is by definition going to be incomplete. All of that eventually prompted me to expand my practice from strictly legal assistance to also a geopolitical risk analysis. In today's deeply interconnected world, you cannot easily separate legal concerns from reputational concerns, from business risk, from geopolitics and security threats.
Was there any defining moment where you realized that law alone could not explain the power?
The first time I had to help a client escape from the clutches of a very bad actor, I realized that in a country that is lawless, the law is almost irrelevant. And even in a country that is law-abiding like the United States, law alone cannot extend beyond its borders. It has its limits against situations where the bad actors simply disregard the law. At that point, you have to start looking at other dimensions and other ways to help and assist. It has to be about media attention if that works in that particular environment. It's also about how to work within your network to provide quiet assistance behind the scenes. Each situation will be different, each country will be different, each person will be different. There is no set one-size-fits-all answers for complex situations involving the intersection of human rights abuses, security, and international dimensions. The law is part of the answer. The law should be powerful enough to help people in need and to provide for justice and consequences, but it's not in itself sufficient.
So you work in a space filled with tension, ideology, and conflicts. What emotionally prepared you for this work?
Seeing injustice at an early age, seeing people simply did not treat each other very well. If you want to survive mentally as the person you want to be and not subsumed by peer pressure, you need to develop a thick skin. You need to find a way to be your own person, no matter what tries to distract you. If you want to remain your own person, you have to disregard all of that and focus only on the things that you actually can control your own behavior, your own actions, the way you treat other people, and the way you treat yourself.
So, growing up multilingual and multicultural, did that change how you view truth and propaganda?
People think differently in different languages. The more languages you know, the more access you have to the way the human mind is shaped by its culture. You understand what is important inside that culture. You start to understand the kind of nuances that generic translations will not be able to fully reflect, but it also gives you access to different people. You build trust, people open up and they talk to you in a way that helps you gain deep insight and deep understanding. You become an insider, even if the culture is not your own. The more you travel, the more you engage with different people, you are able to not only build bridges, but also to understand and solve problems. You become part of that mindset without necessarily having to adopt it as your own. You can understand it enough that you can solve it in the way that people want it solved, not in the way that makes sense.
So, what was the first geopolitical event that deeply shocked your personality?
Without a question, it was 9/11. At first, I thought it was a tragic accident. When the second plane hit, I realized that we were under attack. I was numb. I did not see something like that coming. Using a plane to target buildings, planes filled with civilians, was so beyond anyone's comprehension. The higher the numbers of casualties, the more shocking the whole situation was. When you are in a state of panic and when nothing is clear, the world seems even scarier than the reality. You imagine the worst. To understand what caused all of this, I wanted to gain the skills to be able to address these things effectively, and frankly, I wanted to have more control over my own life, really shape the direction I wanted to go in, and now I felt a sense of purpose connected to it.
So, before 26/11, did you always know your life would move towards national security and global affairs? Or did the world slowly pull you into it?
It was more of a slow evolution than a sudden realization. I was naturally interested in what was going on in other parts of the world. Why do people lie in describing events? How do people dehumanize others? What's important enough to die for? These are the kind of questions that slowly drew me into trying to understand human nature itself. And I realized that good and evil do exist. The desire to live, to build, to bring out the best in human nature, the desire to destroy, to subvert, to lie about it. Once you realize what the motivation is all about, you start seeing where it's all going.
So most people think war are fought with weapons. But today, are war increasingly fought through information?
Information dimension has always been part of warfare. What's different now is that there is much more of a means to wage it. You don't need kinetic weapons at all to destroy somebody's reputation, to subvert society, to take over a political system. It's often enough to instill the fear without even resulting in any serious physical harm. The Cold War was probably the first major example where information warfare became a goal unto itself. That war, most of the time, was not waged on the battlefield. It was waged in newspapers and among intelligence agencies and political fronts and on university campuses and on the streets. It was actually really an information war. As long as that does not happen, the war continues.
So what exactly is information war in simple human terms?
It's a way of achieving superiority over an adversary in the information space by demoralizing the adversary. Today's open societies with unprecedented access to human knowledge are in no way better protected. The confusion and polarization we are seeing is a result of echo chambers and improper treatment of information and inability to process overwhelming informational despair and confusion and paralysis and fear. This ability to manipulate information effectively is what actually should be considered information superiority.
So how dangerous can media narrative become when repeated long enough?
It's very easy to sow dissent, to exploit inherent social vulnerabilities, to fool people into believing something is not what it actually appears. Narratives don't have to be cogent. They can be contradictory when repeated enough. They act like a poison. We are seeing how conspiracy theories are tearing societies apart. It makes it extraordinarily difficult to separate facts from manipulation. You become victims of the reality constructs that you have allowed to frame your reference and your opinions and the way you perceive the world.
So, do government underestimate the power of psychological influence operations?
Some are far more aware and astute to it than others. The countries that have been on the front lines of the Cold War, former Eastern Bloc countries, are well aware of the sort of poison that can divide societies. But being aware alone is not enough. Can you effectively channel it to then inoculate your population to build resilience and to respond effectively? Or will you use that knowledge specifically to subvert reality to your own political internal deliberations and actually use it against the population? Those battles are still being fought. The governments can simply not resist this temptation of using the means they're well aware of for their own interests, and the populations fall into the same traps over and over again. Grounding your population in facts and critical thinking, today's complex informational space battlefield is so multidimensional, it's no longer enough to simply be able to tolerate and adjust to them. They need to be rooted out. Even a prepared, vaccinated party can still get sick. The sheer number and strength of these narratives can demoralize a person. The sense of domestic polarization, of distrust, of paranoia, defensive preparation is never enough anymore. There is a need for offensive strategy. Rebuild a country's ability to advance its own interests affirmatively and not simply by default.
How do ordinary citizens protect themselves from manipulation?
It's not easy. The better you're prepared to withstand the attack, the key to resistance is to be able to talk to everybody without necessarily believing anything in particular, without verifying it. Average citizens, subsumed by work, home duties, assorted issues, health, and so forth, don't have time to peruse diverse sources. They inherently fall for what's easiest and feels most comfortable and convenient. So this preparation needs to start from early childhood. They should immediately see the red flags. What does this story want me to believe, and why is it likely to be at least partially not true? Does it offer black and white solutions? Does it offer very simplistic explanations for complex phenomena? Does it seek to marginalize a particular group? See through the noise enough that it shouldn't bother you? They became very vulnerable to being manipulated. There is a mass under preparation. It will take a long time to reverse.
So what scares you more, military conflicts or engineered social division?
Social division, without a question. Military conflict can eventually run out. With information warfare, you can prolong any conflict indefinitely because you can antagonize people continuously. You can divide them into smaller and smaller groups until they hate more and more people around them. By far, it's the most poisonous means. You can lose your own identity. You can lose any sense of reality. You can literally lose the mind that, as you understand it, due to this conflicted information space and your inability to deal with it.
So can you share one moment where you realized the media narrative and ground reality were completely different?
There was more than one such moment. The stories didn't quite add up. I started questioning everything I read. I just became more skeptical naturally. Where else could they be doing that? The more I realized that they had less and less incentives to provide a complex, multidimensional view of the world to the public, and more incentive to chase after their sponsors. There are no good guys, different shades of self-interested, power-hungry factions vying for power. You need to figure out how to engage in complex realities where there are no easy answers. The media and the storytellers on the political front lines were deliberately simplifying and distorting realities. People were happy to listen to black and white narratives, genuinely surprised when things did not go the way they thought they would. I was able to forecast events in advance unless you understand what's actually going on and how complex reality is. And there is a complete disconnect. There's no common language. People are not able to tolerate any difference of opinion at all. We have societies that are not able to handle reality effectively.
So can national security and human rights truly coexist, or are they continually competing with each other?
I don't think there's a competition or there need to be. In fact, serious human rights violations are a sign that a country may become a security risk. Internal divisions and conflicts spill out in various ways. See how they handle their internal debates socially. If those debates are relegated to courtrooms and political discussions, more likely than not, the country will be civil. If the country demonizing people and fabricating stories, they will have absolutely no problem in doing that to others externally. Even small, politically weak and seemingly and geographically insignificant countries can play a role by acting as proxies for bigger states. No country is too great or too small to ignore. Our societies are becoming increasingly transactional, increasingly focused on power for its own sake, and we have to coexist. Basic respect for human life, for human dignity, for property. A country is oppressive. It is not. It's also going to be corrupt. It's also going to be suboptimal. Eventually, it will become a threat.
So you have worked across highly sensitive geopolitical spaces. How do you emotionally process human suffering while remaining analytical?
There is always going to be some situations and stories that pull you in more than others. If, on the other hand, your client is in deep trouble, you're going to be affected differently. You still have to put your emotions aside and focus on how to solve the problem. Sitting there and lamenting the state of affairs is not going to help anybody. You need to be a person of action. You need to be a person of integrity, focus on getting to the solution, considering every possible option and finding the best path forward. And sometimes that path involves other people. Hasty action that is poorly thought out can make the situation worse, not better. You will be able to assess the degree of risk in every option. Sometimes it means not doing what you really want to do.
So what is the biggest misunderstanding people have about diplomacy?
They think that diplomacy is simply being polite. Diplomacy should have teeth, employing every means at your disposal that is not the short of conflict, sometimes using legal means, sometimes using political pressure, stand up to someone who has overstepped their boundaries in a very firm way, while maintaining professional demeanor. You need to understand who your audience is, who you're dealing with. Diplomacy is not one size fits all. Diplomacy is a skill. Being professional will always get you farther. That doesn't mean being weak. Treating even your adversary in a way that they cannot hold against you and they cannot misuse against you.
So have international institutions become weaker or simply slower?
They are not keeping up with the pace of the current developments. AI, new technologies, new means of communications have sped up the rate at which problems evolve and need to be resolved. And the law also is not keeping up with the newest developments. We need greater integration between policymakers, lawyers, scientists, and other professionals. We also need to be able to manage that appropriately. Our societies have not adjusted well. Each country should be able to understand that while they cannot solve all problems single-handedly, they should be able to contribute to its solution. There needs to be more of a hunger to innovate, too much complacency. This is how stagnation happens. People want improvement, they want growth, they lose sense of purpose, and they become easy fodder for manipulators.
So what human rights issues today deserve far more global attention?
The war in Sudan. It is the deadliest conflict we are facing today. It's also the most ignored. None of that has proven to be enough. That particular humanitarian disaster has been deprioritized in a way that is completely unacceptable. It is starting to spread beyond its own borders. This is not something that continues to be ignored. Two power-hungry factions that are hijacking the lives of 40 million people. What is the whole point of this international consensus? Can we simply afford to ignore so many people?
So when powerful nation speaks about morality, how much of it is it principle and how much is it strategy?
Without basic respect for human life, we would be in a state of perpetual conflict, and we see that happening. The more countries lose the sight of what's important, basic human life, basic human dignity, basic respect for other people's sovereignty, the sort of dehumanization cannot be allowed to spread. There needs to be more of an effort to not normalize these things. We have too often accepted way too much. Things have gotten a lot worse than they were. Each country is for itself and its own interests. Financial profit and power take precedence. When people become expendable, when everything is a transaction, when human life has no inherent value, we become a dystopian society.
So, was there ever a story, interview, or experience that stayed with you long after the camera stopped rolling?
Anything that's been unresolved, in my view, any story where justice has not been served, that stays with me because I feel a sense of personal responsibility. The trauma that they carry from past experiences may stay with them. If the situation itself is not resolved in any meaningful way, then I cannot rest and it does haunt me. What should be done differently? What can we do more?
So, you discussed topic many people avoid. Has speaking openly ever come with personal or professional consequences?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. There have been concerted efforts to obstruct my professional involvement. There are countries, their personalities, their factions, and their political ideologies that stand in the way of success. There's been efforts to isolate me, including kicking me off social media platforms like X. There have been efforts to block me from media. There are political groups deliberately excluding views from participating in public debates and discussions. There have been threats, there have been abusive tactics and social media campaigns and attacks. And none of that will ever be enough to stop me. It also made me a more creative person. These very challenges made me a better professional.
So, do you believe censorship today is becoming more sophisticated rather than more visible?
Censorship can come in any forms. Censorship can come in much more subtle forms. Self-censorships of people wanting to fit into particular groups, forcing you to adjust what you say and how you say it and who you engage with. Those are all forms of censorships. Personal relationships can be a form of censorship. You will simply stay silent. Any social pressure that forces someone to abstain from expressing what they think to be morally right, that is a form of censorship. I'm talking about the issues of morality, of ethics, of principles, of correcting falsehood, of defending truth.
So, what is one geopolitical narrative you believe the public fundamentally misunderstood?
Might makes right is fundamentally false. National laws don't matter, that alliances don't matter, that trust doesn't matter, that nothing matters except pure power for its own sake. Conflicts become a norm. Multiple sides fight for power by any means possible rather than managing their interests in ways that are legal, political, and diplomatic. Such thinking doesn't lead to fewer conflicts, it leads to more.
Are democracies becoming psychologically fragile?
Democracies are probably best suited to pluralism. They become hollowed out and fragile when this sort of pluralism is no longer valued, when people put aside logic and critical thinking, focus excessively on emotions and offense and desires and yearnings and feuds and hatreds, we engage in personalized, emotion-driven mudslinging. This is when we become fragile. When we are not able to define our own values, what is worth living and what we are willing to die for. Comfort and complacency for its own sake become the top norm. That is when democracies become fragile. It only works when the population is educated, when they're unwilling to stand up for their own ethics. That's when democracies become fragile. It's a very powerful political structure, but it only works when the society is willing to hold up its own end of the social bargain and to govern itself effectively.
How much influence do private media ecosystems have over global politics?
A lot, too much. People have allowed them to. People have put aside logic. They have allowed other people to define the world of the view. Media became tools, weaponized tools for different interests to fight among each other. People have given up any sense of agency in evaluating the different narratives. The more people defer the responsibility for thinking to somebody else, tomorrow it's going to be AI over our political systems, over our governance, over our foreign policy, over the world.
So, do experts today face pressure to stay politically convenient instead of intellectually honest?
Funding goes to people who are willing to say what the founders want them to say. Pluralism of thought and the clash of ideas and the marketplace of ideas that serves the world best. We increasingly see personal egos shaping the landscape of what we're exposed to in the first place. The convenient storylines get boosted. Inconvenient narratives are sidelined. How come we hear the same people over and over again, more and more extreme in their views? We need to demand more. We need to ask questions. Propaganda works with repetition. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. It'll be much harder to manipulate and define the discourse that way. More audiences can select more interesting, more helpful, and more engaging content.
So, what is the cost of telling uncomfortable truth?
The cost is no one will want to hear it. You're not telling people the simple things that solve all their problems in 5 minutes. That was emotionally satisfying to people who wanted to see good things happen, who wanted to see a victory of diplomacy over conflict, and who thought that resolving an outstanding issue that has appeared to be unresolvable would also somehow make everything else right. None of that was obviously true. People wanted the narrative to take place, but didn't want to do the work that it would have taken. Anyone who brought up these points, such as myself, was shunned. It challenged conventional thinking. Sometimes experts don't know the best. Sometimes they're just convenient faces of propaganda. People want to be fed the lines that somebody else has written. The more conscious and engaged the public is, the more willing they are pushed back, the more difficult it becomes to stray of course.
What skills should future leaders develop in the world dominated by AI, media noise, and polarization?
Any leader should have leadership skills, humility to learn, willingness to learn, to evolve, stay true to basic principles, be willing to challenge himself, to bring out the best in others, and to try to make new leaders, not new followers. To listen to different opinions, to learn from past mistakes. That's good leadership.
So, how important and dangerous is independent thinking today?
Independent thinking has always been dangerous. Iconoclasts, people who break down inconvenient stories have always been unwanted. Anyone who is an independent thinker can count on going against the grain. The question is, what do you value? Do you value truth? Do you value fitting in and living a comfortable life? Living comfortably is not always good. You will have lost yourself. Independent thinking will always be challenging. It will rarely be welcome, but it will always be worth it.
So, what advice would you give to young people entering diplomacy, journalism, and international law?
Think for yourself. Don't settle for any truth. Don't believe everything you think. Just because it feels or seems convenient, right, and comfortable, and seems to line up with your framework, doesn't mean it's the truth, the reality, or something that's unchanging, unchangeable, or shouldn't be changed.
So, can empathy survive in competitive global politics?
Yes, it's indispensable. If you want to be successful, that is. Someone who lacks empathy for others will eventually find himself isolated, hated, and unable to function effectively. There's only so long you can get by on pure power and superiority. You'll be isolated and left friendless and without allies. Empathy is indispensable. People will see right through them eventually. It's a very lonely and difficult way to live. Empathy actually helps much more than it impedes.
So, what habit helped you build intellectual resilience?
Reading very diverse and difficult books presented complex characters and complex situations forced me to question, is that person good or bad? There are different perspectives. Not everything is always going to be a good fit for every situation. People will have contradictory or paradoxical views. I can't just get angry every time I see something difficult. I have to be able to understand why the person is saying what he's saying, what is wrong with them and what is right for them. Children and young adults should be exposed to as many diverse, uncomfortable stories. They need to engage with the text. They need to be taught how to read critically, and then they can use that base of thinking to ask the right questions and ask those questions of themselves.
So, if someone wants to become a trusted voice globally, where should he begin with?
They should begin by being honest with themselves and to be truthful and not looking to impress people. Being honest in your assessments, listen to other people, formulate their views on best available information, willing to admit mistakes, willing to be humble, willing to learn and to grow and to change their minds if necessary, be respectful of others, but to be firm in their own convictions. If you find that you are just adjusting to the drifts of the world for the sake of convenience, then no one will ever fully trust you.
So, what do you wish someone had told you when you were 25?
It will be much more difficult, but it also will be much more interesting. The older you grow, the more you can synthesize your experiences, attract more interesting people who challenge you, and you'll be surprised every day. You will find ways to learn something new, be open to different possibilities, not just things that you find interesting and engaging at the moment. Be open to things entirely out of your comfort zone. Be willing to push yourself when it becomes painful, when it becomes difficult, when it becomes especially challenging. That's when you know you're onto something. That's when it's time to continue, not to stop. And that's when you know that you're growing.
Now we go into geopolitical survival mode and we start our rapid round. So first question says, what would you prefer, coffee or silence?
Silence.
So one country that emotionally surprised you.
Morocco.
One myth about intelligence communities.
They know everything about everything. No, they don't. They really don't. They know far less than you may think.
Most overrated political buzzword.
Overton's window. It's been extremely overused.
So a book everyone should read.
Whatever is the opposite of what they grew up with. Anything that challenges what they've grown up doing, that is the book they should be reading.
So one interview that changed you.
Any interview where I'm forced to question my own assumptions.
So one thing that people misunderstood about.
I'm not going to stop. It won't. If I have a moral conviction towards something, there's no argument that will make me change my mind.
So if not law and geopolitics, what alternate life would you have chosen?
Something related to psychology for sure. I've always been fascinated with human thinking, especially pathologies.
So what scares you more, ignorance or arrogance?
A combination of both. An ignorant person can stop being ignorant, but an arrogant person never will.
So one word that defines your future?
Troublemaking.
So describe global politics using only one movie title.
Greed.
So what kind of world are we entering over the next 10 years according to you?
Ability to be flexible, resilient, and dynamic matters more than ever. Everything is a lot more interconnected. There is a lot more hidden engagement, need for complexity, nuance, deep thinking. It's an exciting world. A very challenging, but a very exciting world.
So will AI stabilize humanity or destabilize truth itself?
That depends on what people choose to do with it. It's only as good or as evil, as useful or as damaging as the people wielding it. So it will become what we want it to be and what we're willing to fight it to be.
So do you believe society is becoming wiser or merely faster?
It's become faster, it's become noisier, it has not become more emotionally mature all that much. Most societies are driven by a relatively small group of change makers, people willing to fight to make a positive difference. We will see the same patterns emerging over and over again. Most people following their instincts for power, for greed, for revenge. Small group of determined people seeking to rein in humans' instincts towards a better, more ethical future.
So can humanity avoid permanent polarization?
Yes, it has to. We cannot afford permanent isolation into different camps. There's always going to be a struggle between the bridge builders and the isolators. The advantage is on the side of the bridge builders. It's a better life. It yields more benefit. It's more peaceful, more prosperous, more engaging, more secure. While there'll be instinct towards self-isolation and polarization and strife, eventually it will be overcome.
So what gives you hope despite everything you study?
The people who inspire me around me. They give me something to fight for. They make me want to be a better person. You just need that one or two people who make you wish for a better future and give you the strength to keep going.
So what role will ethical leadership play in the survival of democratic systems?
The only good leadership is ethical leadership. So if it doesn't emerge, we will be subsumed by conflict and strife.
So, Irina, before we close, what message would you like to leave for next generation?
Don't be afraid of challenging yourself. You become better and stronger, and your life is much more meaningful and interesting and enjoyable from challenges, from difficulties, from complex and systemic thinking, rather than emotional reaction to every problem. Don't be afraid of pain. Don't be afraid of anger. Don't be afraid of being offended. Be afraid of never changing. Be afraid of being stagnant. Be afraid of never moving forward and never discovering anything new.
Thank you, Irina.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Irina, for sharing your journey, and you remind us that leadership is about purpose, not position. This was Believe in Future Amazing Mentor Global Leadership Series. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and always believe in the future. Thank you.